I told him he was replaceable. Now he's with someone who treats him right. I'm posting this on a throwaway account because all my friends know my main. It all started like a joke. Even though deep down I meant it sometimes, I never imagined he'd ever lash out like that. Because it wasn't the first time. I had told him 1,000 times before, and all he did was laugh it off until that fateful day at the party. Again, I was just joking with friends. Maybe it didn't sound like a joke then, but I really didn't mean it. But I must admit I may have taken it too far that day. I know I said I'd said it before, but never had I said it in front of so many people, or anyone at all. And now, my life is upside down. Nothing seems or feels right anymore. Besides my friends zoning within a very short period, I've had my publishing return 2 of my manuscripts because they had too many flaws, including lacking emotion. And now he's threatening to drop the contract. I'm not a very seasoned or experienced writer, so I can't promise myself that I'd get another. Plus, even if I did, I'd probably disappoint them too, because Danny was my inspiration, and now he's gone. My mind is clouded by emotions, yet totally blank at the same time. Something I never imagined was possible. Sometimes I start off with a good story, but the crappy ending just ruins everything. Every day of my life, I regret that night, and I'm never drinking again after that. Danny and I met at a diner he owned in town. I always saw him there and knew he owned the place, but we never quite had a conversation until that night when I was working late. I went to the diner because I knew I wouldn't have the time to make something for myself by the time I got home, and I just didn't want to face whatever was waiting for me there. But after eating, I just got so invested in my work that I didn't realize time had gone by quickly and the diner was nearly empty except for Danny. He took a seat beside me, which startled me, but he apologized and we laughed it off and got talking. I remember how excited he got when I told him I was a writer. He promised he'd purchase a book of mine and be sure to read it because I supported his business by regularly stopping by, so he'd do the same for me. I told him he didn't have to, but he insisted. By the next evening, he was already giving me a review of the book. I was surprised he read it that fast. It wasn't a lot of pages, though, and he absolutely loved it. He couldn't wait for the next one to be published. That was the first encouragement I'd had in years, or all my life. Because my family wasn't very supportive. They said it was a waste of time, my mom especially. She said I was wasting the accounting degree I'd gotten from school. But if she let me study literature like I wanted to, maybe writing would have been much easier then. But I was coping at least. I loved writing and I have a very imaginative mind, or at least I used to, because now I'm not so sure what's wrong with me. I made Danny's Diner my permanent workspace. His company made my work a lot easier, faster, and better. And I didn't like going home because waiting for me every day was my nonchalant boyfriend, whom I blame for my lack of imagination and inspiration at the time. And almost everything I wrote found its way to relate to him, thus making my stories awful. But with Danny, there was so much more to imagine. He was just the sweetest soul ever. I even stopped paying for my meals because he said I was his favorite writer and role model, and it'd be an insult to let me pay. We got along really well. He was always happy to hear what I had to say and read my work. And that was the most important thing, that he was very supportive, because my boyfriend at the time was anything but supportive. Like the rest of my family, he thought writing was a waste of time and wanted me to actually work in a firm or something so that I could bring home more money to pay bills. I thought of leaving him a lot of times, but I dared not. I don't know if it was my timid thinking or just what he made me believe, but I believed no one would ever want me, and that if I left him, then I'd be alone for the rest of my life. I wasn't very pretty and didn't have a lot of money. My writing job wasn't going very well either, so I was staying at his place. I couldn't stay with my mom because she'd make it her job to remind me every day that I wasted a couple years of my life and her money to get a degree I had no plans on using. I had very low self-esteem back then. The people I cared about didn't appreciate my work. The only book I had published was the one I wrote throughout college, and I was just about a year out of college, so yeah. But with Danny around, I was beginning to feel like I actually mattered, and I was actually beginning to stand up to Jake, my boyfriend. I didn't let him insult me like before anymore, and I fought back when he tried to lay his hands on me. On one of those nights, I ran out of the house after an argument we had, and I went straight to Danny's. Luckily, he was just closing up when I got there. When he saw me and asked what had happened, I couldn't help but sob. I begged him to take me home wherever that was. I really didn't care. I just wanted to be away. So he took me to his house. It wasn't too fancy, but it was really nice. He helped me to his bedroom and was going to use the guest room, but I begged him to stay with me until I fell asleep because I was scared. Somehow I imagined Jake would break in and take me by the hair. I liked it that he didn't ask any questions because I sure wouldn't have answered them. I just wanted to forget it all. Plus, I wasn't sure how I'd explain it all to him. He didn't know I had a boyfriend. He kept brushing my hair with his hand to get me to sleep, but it prevented me from wanting any sleep. I enjoyed it. I couldn't remember when last I was petted like that, and there was chemistry. I could see it in his eyes that he wanted the same thing as me. So I quickly kissed him, a brief one, and then I removed my lips from his. It was barely a kiss. I wanted to see his reaction, to confirm if he was feeling it too. But then he grabbed me in another kiss, and that's how we had sex. Until today, that still remains the best night of my life. I'd never felt more alive. But the next day I left the house before he could even wake up. Because as much as I wanted to be with him, I didn't have a place to stay, and was still depending on Jake for shelter. But the plan was to speed up my work and earn some money so I could move to my own place. But after that night, Danny and I started dating. Those were the most wonderful times of my life. I felt so happy. But I always avoided the topic of going to my place because of Jake. We were still together, and we still had sex and did all other shitty things. But in my defense, I was doing it because I had to earn my keep, not necessarily because I wanted to. Now I know I should have told Danny. I should have come clean with everything, told him about the situation. I know he would have taken me in with his whole heart and treated me with the tender love and care that every woman deserves. But I was just scared, maybe a little embarrassed too. I had been made to feel like nothing, but Danny made me feel like I was everything to him. I didn't want his opinion of me to change, so I kept doing what I was doing. Finally, I resorted to borrowing some money from a friend. I got my own house and quietly moved out of Jake's. I left him a note saying I was done, though. A year after we started dating, Danny asked me to move in with him. I wasn't very excited about it. I mean, I liked it because it was Danny. But I had already been so traumatized living with Jake that I wasn't sure what to expect. I kept the Jake thing a secret, so I couldn't tell him that. I just kept postponing and postponing. The last excuse I gave was that I was waiting for my rent to expire just so it didn't waste. He was ever so patient and waited till the end of that year, and I finally moved in. It was far from what I was afraid of. In fact, it was bliss. Occasionally, I got breakfast in bed, we split the chores and did them together. I was also stable then and was able to pay off my debt. Everything was going wonderfully, except I was still kind of scared. Just a little. I felt I had to control him, if not he could turn like Jake and start treating me like I was a worthless piece of shit. And that's when I naively came up with the idea that if I treated him somewhat like that, then there was no way he'd get to treat me the same way. And that's when I started misbehaving. It was just a few weeks after I'd moved in. I yelled at him whenever. Guilt tripped him into doing stuff for me. Stuff a full-grown man shouldn't have been doing. I constantly told him that if he couldn't handle me, I might as well find someone who could. He always took it as a joke or tried to take it as a joke by laughing it off. I had him right in my palms, and it felt so good. I liked being in control. Had never been before then, but I liked it. But then one day, Danny decided he'd had enough. I'd obviously gone too far, to be honest. A friend had invited us over for a party, just something small. We were all seated, and then came the toasts. And somewhere along the line, there was a toast to me. She referred to me as an award-winning author, which I wasn't and am not still. And she kept thanking Danny for being by my side. In her words, she said I was a hot mess before Danny came into my life, and in the short time he did, I had published more successful books than I ever had my entire life. She went on and on about how he saved me and all. I had already taken quite a bit of alcohol. So as she spoke, I just kept drinking to stop my new arrogant self from saying something stupid, but that made things worse. Danny kept trying to get me to drop the glass and quit drinking, but when he finally got hold of it, I took the bottle instead. He was trying to get that too when I pushed him away and started yelling. I told him he was pathetic for thinking I couldn't do without him. I said even without him, I would have made my way up and I didn't need his help. I told him anyone could have done what he did, so it's not like he was special. And he shouldn't feel like he's better or any different than the other men, just because my friend was showering him with praises. Then I dropped it again, but louder. I told him he was replaceable, and in fact, I could pick any man in the room to take this place that very minute. Everyone, including my girlfriends, just stood and watched in shock, and some idiotic ones were recording. But I didn't care. I walked to a random guy and asked him if he'd want to be my boyfriend. I kissed him before he could say anything or even react, but when I turned, Danny was gone, and others followed up. No one bothered to spare me a word. I'd always thought I wanted a little drama in my life where I wasn't on the receiving end, but at that moment I wasn't so sure that was what I had in mind. I didn't realize how much damage I had done just then. I told myself I was going to let Danny cool down a bit, that he'd come around. He always did. But not that time. I stayed at a hotel that night, and nights after that. Somehow I was getting scared. I was scared he'd beat me up or something. And I'm not saying this to get pity from you guys, but Jake scarred me for life, and all I did to Danny was because I loved him, as selfish as they may have seemed, and I really hoped he'd come around. I promised to be better if he did. They were all right after all. I'm useless without him. I was waiting for Danny to reach out first. I know it's stupid considering I was at fault, but I was thinking of all the what-ifs. What if he didn't want me anymore, or he got so mad and did something or kicked me out? I was just too scared of the possibilities, so I stayed back, invested in my work, or at least tried to be. I was having constant writer's blocks. I wrote meaningless things, but that wasn't enough to make me go to him first. Days turned to weeks, and I still hadn't heard anything from Danny. I was constantly viewing his status, stalking him on Instagram to see if he was as miserable as I was. But far from it, he seemed to be glowing up. The way he smiled in his pictures looked genuine. He looked really happy without me. His business was getting better. He opened an outlet in another just in the few weeks I allowed him. I felt so useless. More useless than when I was being harassed, maltreated, and constantly reminded by my ex of how useless I was. And speaking of my ex, I don't know how he did it, but he somehow got to Danny. He told Danny everything except the part where he beat me up. Told Danny I cheated on him with him, and later ran away with him without actually ending things. He made me look like the villain. Danny didn't even tell me this himself. He knew even before the party that night. Being a gentleman, he didn't just approach me and start cursing. He reached out to my friend and expressed his concerns, told her a strange number had contacted him, and told me things about me, even added that I would leave him someday the same way I did my ex. But my friend, ever so loyal, told him the full story of how Jake had mistreated me as a lady. That's probably why Danny put up with all my shit, because he knew what I had been through. I just wish I'd been told sooner. Maybe I would have been different, better. I messaged him after I heard, but no response. I called, but he refused to pick up. I don't blame him. I probably wouldn't have texted back or picked up the call either, but I just missed him so much, and my life was in ruin without him. More importantly, I was running out of funds. I couldn't afford the hotel anymore. I was tired of buying food too, plus the few clothes I'd gotten from the store were worn out from overwearing. So I packed my things and went back to Danny's place. I had already rehearsed what I was going to say to him. I crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. But when I went there, the lock had been changed. I knocked on the apartment door with no hope of a response. But I got one, except it wasn't Danny. It was an older lady. I asked for Danny, and she didn't know who he was. She'd moved in about a week ago. I went to the diner, and there was something else in place of it. Danny had moved the business too. I asked a neighbor there if he knew what happened, and it turned out he had left town entirely, and I was left stranded. I couldn't go to Jake's because it's been years since I left without a word. So I went to the only place I had left in the world, my mom's. Even though she hated my job with all my guts, she couldn't throw her own child back to the streets. I've been living with her since, and I still kept an eye on Danny. I viewed his every post, and then I started noticing something, a particular woman in almost all of his pictures, at the new dinner, at a fancy restaurant, at his house, everywhere. It was getting so frustrating, but I didn't have a say because he wasn't mine. We didn't exactly break up, though, so I imagined I could still claim him. I located the diner and paid him a visit. I wore the most sexy piece of clothing I could find in my closet and put on some makeup. something I didn't usually do. But I didn't know I was about to witness the saddest thing ever. It could have been any other day, but that one. I was unfortunate to walk into an engagement celebration. And yes, Danny was engaging someone. I couldn't just believe he'd do such a thing. We had been together for years, but he never even thought of proposing to me. Yet a few months after we're broken up, and not even officially, he's ready to get on with his life with someone else as his wife? I felt like a fool who would always be used all her life. First Jake and then Danny. I felt so stupid and embarrassed. And to think that my friends were there too. They knew, yet they didn't tell me. I made a fuss about it, because I had come too far to just turn back without saying a word. I saw the girl who was going to be Danny's wife. She was pretty and had nice hair. I hated that. I wanted to pull her hair out so badly. And I'm sure I would have had they not held me back. Danny didn't even spare me a minute. He was too busy protecting his woman to talk to me. My friend took me to the hotel she was staying at and still didn't want to talk to me. I just cried my eyes out and merely existed in her room. After a couple of days, I decided it was time to return. No one wanted me there anyway. She saw me off at least. And for the first time since the first incident, she spoke more than 2 sentences to me in person. She told me that Danny was a good man and deserved to be happy, and that I was the lucky one in the relationship. Danny was just unlucky to have found me. As much as that line hurt me, deep inside I knew it was true, and I didn't even try to argue. I didn't have the energy either. He was with someone better, someone who could treat him better than I ever did. And as much as I wish I could go back in time, what's done is done. And in the end, I'm stuck here with my mom and her brothers constantly reminding me of what a shitty profession I've chosen. As for Danny, I still missed him very much, and I'm all but miserable without him. How ironic it is that I called him replaceable, yet he's turning out to be the one I could never replace. Update. Hey guys, it's been a couple weeks since I last posted, and I've read all of your comments. Thank you all for the good, the bad, and the ugly ones too. I have news, but it's not entirely good. So I kept stalking Danny on all his social media handles. I'm not sure why. But the last post I saw was of wedding pictures. He still hasn't replied to my texts, just in case you guys were still wondering. And ever since that post, I haven't been able to see anything concerning him anymore. My guess is he blocked me. But I've been thinking. He could have blocked me any time before then. Maybe after what I did at the party, or weeks later, or after I ruined his engagement party, just any time. But he just decided to do it after he got married and posted pictures. Bravo to him anyway, because I think that gave me the closure I so desperately needed. I'm planning on quitting writing. I've had my fair share, and I'm not so sure I'm cut out for it. I thought writer's block was really just a phase, but now I'm not so sure, because I've still been able to write nothing, and as I write this right now, it's been a year since Danny got married, which makes it around 2 years since the incident, and since I last wrote anything meaningful. And when I started this post, I mentioned my publisher was threatening to drop the contract. Well, it turned out those weren't just empty words. I have to find a new path for myself, something less rocky. Mom has a friend who'd be eager to get me a job somewhere in finance. And Mom herself will be so thrilled if I told her I was ready. It's her lifelong dream. Lowell. Anyway, thank you guys for reading until the end. And I hope by the end of this, you guys don't think I'm such a bad person. But if you do, that's okay too. And to those of you that hope the end would be more tragic than it already is, well, thanks for staying to find out anyway. Ciao.